First, let's understand what exactly is SQL. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So this is a query language which is used to query huge volume of data. Alright, so it can be small volume of data as well as huge volume of data, but mostly SQL uses to query high volume of data, because if you have less volume of data, you can even use Microsoft Excel, for example. So why do we use SQL? Because we have to query comparatively a better volume of data. Alright, and coming back to this course, we will be using Microsoft SQL Server to learn SQL, and whatever you learn, it will be compatible with Oracle. So you can use this SQL in Oracle database as well as IBM DB2, or you can also use MySQL. So basically, SQL is a language which can be run on any databases. For example, in this particular course, we will be taking Microsoft SQL Server, but you can also run SQL in MySQL, IBM DB2, Oracle, and a lot of other databases. So whatever learnings you will get from this course, you can apply on all these databases. And please note that this is the crash course which is for absolute beginners. So I'm going to assume that you do not have any SQL knowledge. And I have made sure that approximately it will take 2 hours of yours. So please make sure that you take this course wisely and you give your full attention, because I have given so much detailed information about SQL. So what we are going to do is we will be installing the Microsoft SQL Server 2019, and then on top of that we will import a sample database and then we will work on it. Later on, I'll also show you how you can create tables, databases, and so on. With this, first, let me just show you how to install Microsoft SQL Server, and then we will import a database, and then we will start working, or rather we will start coding the actual SQL statements. Alright, so let's go straight to the board. Before we get started, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the notification bell icon. Now let us start by installing the free version of Microsoft SQL Server. So just go to your browser and search for SQL Server download, and the very first link which you get is SQL Server downloads, and once you click here you'll get this link. And as I am staying in India, that is the reason I'm getting en-in in the link. If you are staying in US, you will get en-US, and suppose if you are staying in any other country, let's say Great Britain, then you have en-GB. So you can click on any of these links. So let's say I am into this link, that is en-in, and you get two types, that is Developer Edition and Express Edition. Now both these editions are free editions and you can use it freely. So for this particular course, I'll be using this Developer Edition. So I'll just click on download now, and you see that I have already clicked here and I got this file downloaded. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this file here, that is in G drive, softwares, and MS SQL Server. So you can create your own folder and keep your downloadable file there. Now double click on this particular exe file. Now you get three installation type, that is basic, custom, and download media. I'm not going to talk about download media, and most of the time you can either give basic or custom. Now I want to install the basic default configuration. That is the reason I'll just check basic. If you want more control on the download process, you can choose this custom. So at this moment, I'll click on this basic, right? Just read this agreement and just click on accept. If you want, you can change this install location. I'll just keep it as it is. Click on install and it will take some time. So just go and grab a cup of coffee because it is going to take some time to download all the packages. Now here You see that the first one is instance name, and the instance name is a unique connection string of your instance of the SQL Server, and you need an instance to connect to your database. The next one we have is log. So this log folder is the place where it will create the log files for all the operations which you will perform. And this is the installation media folder, and this is the resources folder. So what I'll do is I'll just click on connect now, just to test whether the connection is getting successful or not. And if you see this particular message, that is Microsoft SQL Server 2019. So you see that if you get this message, that means connection is successful. So at this moment, I'll just close this and I'll just click on this install SSMS. So this SSMS represents SQL Server Management Studio, and you have to install this. So just click on this, and let me just open with Google Chrome itself. Click on OK. You can open with any other browser as well. And here, if you just come down, you see that you have this option, that is download SSMS. Just click on this link, and you see that this particular download process is started, right? So just wait for some time. So you see that this exe file is downloaded in my PC. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this and I'll just keep in this particular location. So I have kept this exe file here, and just double click on this. And if you want, you can change this particular location, but I don't want to change it. So I'll just click on install, and you see that Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio is getting installed. So please hold for some time until this installation is completed. So you see that the setup is completed, and you can also close this as well. That is SQL Server Developer Edition. Yes. And just go to a search in your computer and just search for SQL Server, and you see that you get this particular link, that is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18. So you just have to click here, that is click on this. So you see here you get this connect to server screen, and here you have the server name, and in my case the server name is desktop-d5ajviu. And in case if you don't find any server name, you can just click here and you can just browse for more and go to database engine, and here you will find all the server names. In my case I have only one server name, that is the reason it is showing this particular server name. So here just click on this connect button, and in case if you want to confirm your server name, what you can do is you can just go to files, just go to new, and then query with current connection. You can just give select, and then you can just give @ symbols 2 times, and then server name, and just click on this execute button, or you can just press F5 in your keyboard. So here you see that this is the server name in the output, and if you just want to know the SQL Server version, then you can simply code a SQL query. For example, you can just give select @ version, right? Press F5 in your keyboard, and you see that this is the particular version, right? That is Microsoft SQL Server 2019. So we have successfully installed the Microsoft SQL Server 2019 along with Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. In the next video lesson, we will download and import a sample database, which is AdventureWorks sample database. On top of this, Microsoft SQL Server 2019. And here towards the left, you see that under databases, we have system database as well as database snapshots, right? But we cannot use the system database for training purpose. So it is important to either create a database or use an existing database. And for this particular course, at start, we are going to download and import AdventureWorks 2019 database. And as we move towards the later part of the course, we are going to create our own database as well. So at this moment, let us see how to download and import AdventureWorks 2019 database in our Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And the reason why I'm going to choose this particular database is because this database contains the details of human resource employees, person details, sales, and a lot of detailed data. So this is a perfect database. To import this particular sample database, what you have to do is, let us go to Google or whatever browser you are using. Just search download AdventureWorks sample database. And the first link which you get is AdventureWorks sample databases SQL Server. And if you just come down, you see that you have another link from GitHub. So if I just click on this first link, you'll get this. And if you just come down, you see that you have OLTP data, you have data warehouse data, and then we have lightweight data, right? So OLTP database is online transaction processing workloads, while data warehouse is for data warehousing, and lightweight is a lightweight database, as the name suggests. So for this particular course, we are going to download this OLTP. And if you just see here, you have AdventureWorks 2019.bak file. Now, if you are using a very old version of Microsoft SQL Server, for example, if you're using Microsoft SQL Server 2016, then you can use this, that is AdventureWorks 2017.bak. And if you're using Microsoft SQL Server 2012, then you can use AdventureWorks 2012.bak. So depending on the version of your Microsoft SQL Server, you can use the corresponding OLTP. Even if you have installed Microsoft SQL Server 2016, if you want to import AdventureWorks 2017.bak, then it is not a problem at all. But for this particular course, I'm going to use this. So once you click this, you'll get this AdventureWorks 2019.bak file. You can see that I have already downloaded this and I have kept in this particular folder. Now what you have to do is you have to go to C drive. So if I just go to my C drive, and inside that you have program files. Click here and go to Microsoft SQL Server, right? And then you have this particular folder, that is, this is the particular instance you have at this moment. So click here and go to MS SQL. Inside that you have backup folder. So just click here and continue. And what you have to do is you have to copy this AdventureWorks 2019.bak file and paste it here. Now just go to your SQL Server Management Studio and make sure that you are connected to it. And then what you have to do is you have to just go to database and just right click and click on this restore database. Click here. Now here click on device, and towards your right, that is extreme right, you see 3 dots. Just click here, and here you see that you have backup media file, that is file and URL. Now since you are going to import a file, so you don't have to choose URL, so file is okay, and click on add. And here you see that you have this particular backup. Now if you don't see your .bak file here, you can just click on this refresh button and you will be able to see that. In case if you are not able to see it here, or if it is not pointing to this particular backup file location, then what you can do is you can just go to backup and you will be in this particular location. Alright, I'll just click on OK, and you see that it is already present here now, right? And click OK. Now make sure that this box is checked, and again you click on OK. This will take some time. So what basically it is doing, it is going to import this particular database. So you see here that database AdventureWorks 2019 is restored successfully. Click OK, and here you see that you have this particular database. Hey people, welcome back. So I assume that all of you have installed Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So first make sure that you are connected, and here you go to databases, click here, and you see here we have the database, that is AdventureWorks 2019. And once you expand this, you just click on this plus symbol, and you see that here there are a list of tables. Alright, so let me just show this. So you see here this is the schema name, that is human resources is schema name, and department is table name. Similarly here person is schema name and address is table name. So it is like schema name dot table name. Alright, so let's take one table. For example, let's take human resources dot employee table. So to see all the columns of the table, you can just click on this plus symbol, and you see these are all the list of columns. And you see, for example, business entity ID. So this is one column, and this is also called a field. Similarly, we have national ID number, which is another field, and we have login ID and so on. And you see here, this is PK. So PK denotes primary key and FK denotes foreign key. So we are going to talk about PK and FK later on in the course. At this moment, you see that the third one we have is INT, that is integer. So this particular field is of integer data type. That means it will consider only the integer values. Next one we have is national ID number, and you see it is n varchar of 15. That means it is a string data type of 15 length. So we are going to talk about all these data types later on in this course. So at this moment, let us try to focus on selecting the records from this particular table. So for this, what I'll do is, let me just bring this towards left, and this is my table. So just click on this new query. I'll just click on this new query and wait for it. And you see now that we are into AdventureWorks 2019. Now it is very important that you should select AdventureWorks 2019. And suppose you are in master. So if you are in master project, and if you want to go to AdventureWorks 2019, then either you can just select here and choose this, or you can just write here use AdventureWorks 2019 and just click on this execute button. So this is the execute button which will run all the SQL queries. So to run all the SQL queries or any one SQL queries, you can just click on this execute button. So you see, if I just click it, you see it says command completed successfully, and now I'm into AdventureWorks 2019. Alright, so let me just delete this, and let's say I want to retrieve all the records from this table. So for that, the syntax is select star from table name. So it is human resources dot employee. So please note that here you have to give schema name dot table name, where human resources is schema name while employee is table name, and at end it is good to give semicolon. Even if you don't give semicolon, it is not a problem, but I would suggest you to give semicolon. And if you just give select star, that means you are trying to select all the columns of the table. Click on execute, Wait for some time and you see these are all the records from this particular table. So you see we have business entity ID, we have national ID number, login ID and so on. And let's say if I want to only select few columns, for example, let's say I want to select only business entity ID. So I can just say business entity ID, and let's say I want to just get job title. So I'll just say job title from this particular table name, click on execute, and this time it has only selected these two columns. Similarly, let's say if I want to only select job title, you see I'm able to only select job title. Now here you see that we are having duplicate records as well. So if you want to select only distinct records, then you can just give here distinct keyword, and once you click on execute, you see now it is showing only distinct records. So here you see it is showing 67 rows, and previously if I just remove this distinct keyword, click on execute, now you see it is showing 290 rows. That is the reason if you want to select only the distinct record, that means only the unique records, then click on execute and you will get only the unique records. Alright, now let us try to filter the records based on a particular condition. For that we have to use where clause. So let's say I want to get all the records where job title is Research and Development Manager. So let's say if I just copy this and if I just give where job title equal to, and I have to give this value in single quotes. So if I just give like this, you see this is a string, and that is the reason if it is a string you have to give that value inside single quotes, right? So if I just execute this, you see I have only two records where the job title is Research and Development Manager. In the same way, you can also give some other operators as well. So in this case, we have used equal to operator. And let's say if I just execute only this particular statement, I can just select this and click on execute. And you see I'm getting all these records. And let me just comment out this particular line. So for commenting out, you can just give 2 hyphens or 2 dashes. And you see this is commented out, and if I execute this, it will only execute this particular statement. Alright, and let's say this time I want to get all the records where business entity ID is greater than, let's say 50. So I can just give here where business entity ID is greater than 50, and if I execute, you see I'm getting all these records where business entity ID is greater than 50. Similarly, you can just give greater than equal to also. That means business entity ID must be greater than 50, or it can be equal to 50 as well. Click on execute, and you see this time it has also selected 50. Similarly, you can give less than equal to also. So if I execute, you see it is selecting all the records till 50. So either it should be equal to 50 or less than 50. Similarly, I can use less than 50, and this time it has selected till 49. Alright, so this is the way to filter all the records using where clause. Let's proceed further, and suppose I want to add 2 numbers, or let's say 2 columns. For example, let's say if I have subtotal, and let's say I have tax amount, and if I execute this, you see I'm getting subtotal with tax amount, and let's try to add these 2 fields together. So for that I can just use plus operator. For example, I can just give subtotal plus tax amount, and you see that both of these are numeric fields. Alright, so if I click on execute, you see it has added the value of subtotal with tax amount, and you see here we have the new value. Now here you see it is not showing any column name, that is, it shows no column name. So if you want to display a particular column name of your choice, then you can use an alias. For that, you have to use as keyword. So you can just give here as. Let's say if I want to give an alias that is a temporary column name, so I can just say like, let's say sub total with tax amount. So I've given a meaningful name. So if I execute this, now you see this is the column name which is displaying here. So this is just a temporary column name. In the same way, you can also give minus operator. For example, if I just give here minus, and let's say if I just remove this and give something like, let's say A, and you see here if I click on execute, now this is the difference between subtotal and tax amount. Similarly, you can give into, or you can also give division operator. So for example, if I just give like this, let's execute this. So in this case, if the value of this tax amount is 0, then that will be a problem. So if I just show you, you see here, in this case, tax amount is not 0. That is the reason we are not having any problem. But let's say the value of tax amount is 0. And if I execute this, you see it says divide by 0 error encountered. So whenever you give division operator, make sure that this particular value, whatever it is having, must not be equal to 0. So it can be either greater than 0 or less than 0. And in this case, I see that all the records are greater than 0. So I can just give here where this particular column is greater than 0, like this. So it is better to write something like this. That is where tax amount is greater than 0. And if I execute this, you see that it has executed successfully. Hey people, welcome back. Another point is you can use all the arithmetic operators, that is plus, minus, multiplication or division operators in where clause as well. For example, you can also give something like this. That is, you can just give where subtotal plus tax amount is greater than 500. So you see, if I execute this, now you see this particular column will be having values which is greater than 500. But please note, you cannot give something like this. That is, where this particular temporary column name is greater than 500. And you see it gives a red underline and it says invalid column name. If I execute, you see it gives an error. This is because the order of execution in SQL Server engine is different. So what happens is, SQL Server engine first considers from clause, and then it reads the where clause, and at end it reads the select clause. So that is the reason first it goes to this particular table, and then it goes to where statement and it tries to find this particular column. But until now, this particular column is not defined. So that is the reason this particular query fails. So in this particular case, you can just give here subtotal plus tax amount is greater than 500, and this will perfectly work. Now another point to note is that let's say if you are into this particular table, that is person table, and you see here, if I just delete all these, and if I just say select star from person dot person table, and you see here I have to just correct this, and if I execute this, now you see I'm getting all the columns, and you see here, let's say I want to get the first name, middle name and last name. So I can just give here first name and then middle name, comma last name, and if I just execute this, you see I'm getting all these columns, and let's say I want to combine all these columns. For example, I want to create a full name where it is combination of first name, middle name and last name. Then I can just give plus operator as well. So for that, what I have to do is I have to give first name plus middle name plus I can give last name, and let's give an alias. For example, I'll just say full name. Just execute this, and you see, to execute you can just click on this execute button, or you can press F5 in your keyboard, right? Both the options you have. And now you see the full name is first name plus middle name plus last name. So when you use plus operator with integers or numeric fields, then it will add those numbers. But if you use plus operator with strings, then it behaves as concatenation, that is combining multiple strings. And just to make it more better, what you can do is you can just give first name and then you can add a space. So I can just give, you see here I've just added a space inside two single quotes, and here also I can just give single quote space, and then I'll just give plus last name. And if I execute this, now you see it looks more better, right? So this is also another way to use plus operator. Let's talk about null values. So you see here we have some null values in few columns, right? So anyways, this is the resultant column name, and you see here we have null values. Similarly, here we have null values. So what exactly is null value? So null values are unknown missing values, and you cannot define a particular value for null values, and that is the reason null values are unknown and missing values. And let's say if you want to know all the records which contains null values, then you can give a condition something like this. That is, let's say I can just give here where, in this case you see here middle name is containing null values. So I can just say where middle name is null. So you see, if I just give where middle name is null, and let me just remove all this, this is not required, and if I execute this, now you see I'm getting the first name, middle name and last name, where middle name is always null. Similarly, let's say if you want to remove all those records where middle name is null value, then you can just give is not null operator. For that, you can just give where middle name is not null, and if I execute this, you see I'm getting all the records where middle name is not null. Alright, so that's it in this video lesson. Take care. Bye. Hey people, let's talk about AND operator and OR operator. I'm into employee table and I want to get all the records where marital status equals S and gender is equal to female, that is F. So for that, I can just give where marital status equals S, and I can just use AND operator. I have to give AND keyword, and I can just say gender equals F, that is female. So if I just execute this, it will give me all the records where that person is single and the gender is female. So you see it is S for all the records, and you see for gender column you will be having only F. And let's say I want to get all the job title. So first let me only execute the selected condition without giving where clause. So if I just comment out this, let's say if I just comment out, and in this case you see we have lot of job titles. Now if I want to know all the records where either job title is design engineer or it can be research and development manager, then in that case I can just give where job title equals, and let's say design engineer. So I can just say design engineer, or I can just say that job title equal to research and development manager. And if I execute this, if I just execute this now, you see I'm getting 5 records, and you see either the job title is design engineer or we have Research and Development Manager. Hey people, welcome back. Now you see that in previous example, we have used this job title column multiple times using OR operator. So if you have a requirement where you want to test for a particular column multiple times, then it is not good to use OR operator. In that case, it is better to use IN operator. So in the same case, if I just comment out, you see the better way to write is where job title in, and inside this you have to pass the list of values. For example, you have design engineer, and then I can just give a comma and another value which is research and development manager, and so on. So you see here we have only two values, and if I execute, I'm getting the same result, and it says where job title in design engineer or research and development manager, right? So this looks more better. And suppose if I just select all the records from table, you see here I'm getting so many records, and let's say I want to get all the records where business entity ID is either 1, 5, 10 or 15. So in that case, what I can do is I can just give here where business entity ID in, and here I have to give, let's say 1, 5, 10 and 15. So let me just give a semicolon at end, and I'll just comment out this line. So if I just execute this, now you see I'm getting all the records where business entity ID are either 1, 5, 10 or 15. So it is same as business entity ID equal to 1 or business entity ID equal to 5 or business entity ID equal to 10 or business entity ID equal to 15. But this looks more clear, and another operator which we can use is between operator. So let's say if I just select this and get all the records. Now let's say I want to know all the records where business entity ID is between 1 and let's say 50. So in that case, what I can do is I can just give where business entity ID between 1 and 50. So let me just comment out this line, and you see if I just give between operator, and you see here if I execute this, now I'm getting all the records, that is 50 rows, where business entity ID are between 1 to 50, right? So this is all about between and in operator. Hey people, welcome back. Let's talk about like operator. So suppose you want to match a particular pattern, then in that particular case you can use like operator. For example, let's say if I want to know all the records where name is starting with A and after that it can have 0 or more number of characters, then I can just give here like where name like, and I can just give a %. So please note, % means that it will match 0 or more number of characters. So if I execute, you see all these names are starting with A, and after that it can have either 0 or more number of characters. And let's say if you want to start all the names which is starting with AL, or let's say ALA, then I can just give ALA. You see here it will give me all the records, that is at this moment it is having 2 records. Similarly, if I just select only this, and in the same way you can also find all the records which is ending with a particular value. For example, let's say I want to know records like this, that is it is ending with O. So I can just give here O, and this means that %O, that means before O it can have 0 or more number of characters. So if I execute this, Now you see all these names are ending with O, right? In the same way, let's say if I just execute only this, and let's say I want to know all the records where name is containing, let's say 6 characters. So you see here we have Alberta, then we have Alaska, and so on, right? Now let's say I want to know all the records which is starting with AL, and after that it can have 4 characters. So overall it will be having 6 characters. So for that I can use underscore. So underscore will match only one character. So if I just give one underscore for one character, in the same way I have to give total of 4 underscore, and you see if I execute this, now I have 2 records where the length is 6 and it is starting with AL, right? So in this way you can use like operator. Alright, let's talk about sorting of result. So here, let's say I want to get, for example, let's say I want to get city and let's say postal code, and if I just execute this, now you see I'm getting city and postal code, but you see here these 2 columns are not sorted. What I mean is, let's say I want to sort city, that is this particular column, in descending order or ascending order, then for that I can just give order by clause. So if I just give order by city, and if I don't give here DESC or ASC, that means by default it will be in ascending order. So if I execute this, now you see it is sorted, and this result will give you everything in sorted order, and by default it will be in ascending order. And if you just come down, you see at end it is starting with Z or Z, right? Similarly, if I just say, let's say DESC, that is for descending order, then if I execute it, now you see now it is in decreasing order, right? In the same way I can just say order by, let's say postal code, in descending order. So you see here now I'm getting all the records in descending order. Now let me just write another query. For example, if I just give select star from person.address, or let's take person.person table, and if I execute this, now let's say I want to sort the result based on 2 columns, that is first name and last name, then I can just give here select first name and last name, and if you want you can also give another column. So it is not mandatory that whatever column you are giving in where clause, it must be present in the select clause as well. So it is optional and it is based on your particular requirement. So let's say I can also give here middle name from person.person table, where if I want to add a particular condition, let's say middle name is not null, and if I want to order the result, let's say if I want to sort the result based on a particular column, or I can also give list of columns. For example, I can just say order by, let's say first name in descending order, comma last name in ascending order. So either I can just give ASC, or even if I don't give, so by default it will be ascending order, but I would recommend to give ASC for ascending order so that the query looks more meaningful. And if I just execute this, you see here we are getting first name, last name and middle name, which is sorted by first name in descending order. So here you see we are getting Zo, and then here we are getting ballet and bell. So for the last name, you see it is sorted in ascending order, so both the records are matching. In that case, you see it will be in ascending order, that is increasing order. So first BAILEY has come, and next we have got bell, right? So in this way you can use order by clause to sort the result. Alright, Let's talk about group by clause. Group by clause is used to group the records per category. For example, you see here for this particular table, that is sales order detail table, you see there are a lot of entries for sales order ID 43659. So you see here from here to here there are 12 records with different unit prices, right? Similarly, you see for sales order ID 43660 we have 2 records and so on. So if I want to group based on sales order ID and I want to know the total of unit prices for each sales order ID, then in that case we can use group by clause. So what I mean is, let's say if I just copy this and if I just give group by sales order ID, and if I want to know the total of unit price per sales order ID, so for that I can just give an aggregate function called as sum. So this is one of the aggregate function, and if I just give an alias, let's say total unit price per sales, and if I just execute this, you see for this particular sales order ID, that is 43659, the total of unit price is 14323.7118. So what I mean is, let's execute both these, and you see for this particular sales order ID we had so many entries, and if you do the summation of all these till here, for this particular sales order ID you get this particular value, that is 14323.7118. Similarly, if you take this particular sales order ID and you see there are 2 entries, so for that the sum is 1294. So you see if I just add this plus this, I get this particular value, that is 1294.2529. In the same way, there are a lot of other aggregate function. For example, I can also give an aggregate function called AVG, which is used to give the average value per category. Similarly, I can also give count, and this is used to give the count of total number of records. In the same way, we have max, and it is used to give the maximum value out of that particular column, and we have min, which is used to give the minimum value. So let's try to give examples of all these. So we have already seen how sum of this particular unit price has given me the total sum. In the same way, if I just give average of unit price, and if I just give here average of unit price per sales, if I execute, now this time it has given me the average of all the unit prices per sales order ID. So for this particular sales order ID, that is 43659, this is the average unit price. Similarly, I can give the count also. So if I just give count of unit price as, let's say, count of unit price per sales, or I can just say count of unit price, and if I just execute this, you see here this particular sales order ID, there are total of 12 unit prices. So if I just execute this, let me just show you also. So you see for this particular sales order ID, we have total of 12 records. So from here to here, we have total of 12 unit prices, and that is the reason if you give count of unit price, it will give the count of total number of unit prices per category, that is per sales order ID, right? Because I'm giving group by sales order ID. Similarly, if I just give max of unit price as, let's say, if I just give max unit price, and if I execute both these SQL queries, so you see here for this particular sales order ID 43659, the maximum is, you see, it is 2039.994, right? And that is the reason it has displayed the maximum unit price as 2039.994. Similarly, if I just come down, let's say for sales order ID 43660, we see that the maximum is 874.794. So here you see we have got 874.794, right? So in this way you can use max, and we also have min, and let's execute both these queries. And here you see that for this particular sales order ID, the minimum it is showing as 5.1865. So if I just come here, you see here the minimum is 5.70, and I think this is not minimum. Yeah, you see here this is the minimum, that is 5.1865, and that is the reason it is showing as 5.1865. So in this way you can use all these aggregate functions along with group by clause. Let's talk about some other functions. I have taken the person table because it has lot of string values. So you see we have first name, middle name, last name, and so on. So these are all strings, and I want to show some functions related to string. So that is the reason I have taken this person table. And if you remember, we had coded this particular SQL query where we had used the plus operator to combine multiple strings. In the same way, if you don't want to use plus operator to combine strings, then in that case we have a function called concat function. So what I mean is, if I just give concat, and here I have to give the first name, middle name, and last name, and let me just give a comma and then single quote, and let me just give a space between first name and middle name. Similarly, I'll give a space between middle name and last name, and you see here that if I just execute this, I'm getting the same result, that is Syed, E, Abbas, and so on. And in this case, if I just remove this where, and if I just execute, now you see here that if we have null values, so here in middle name we have null values, but if you use the concat function, it will ignore the null values. And you see here it is combining the Kim with last name, that is Kim Abercrombie, right? So in this way it is better to use concat function in place of plus operator if you are not sure that any particular record might contain null values. Similarly, we can give the length function. So let's say if I want to know the length of each record, for example, let's say for first name, so what I'll do is, let me just delete this last name and middle name, and let me delete all these. So if I'm just here, let's say if I just get the first name first, and I want to know the length of this particular string. Similarly, if I want to know the length of the second record, so what I can do is, I can use the len function, that is length function, and here I have to pass this particular argument. And if I just execute this, you see that length of this string is 4, that is it has 4 characters, so length is 4. For this particular string it has 9 characters and the length is 9. In the same way, if I want to extract fixed number of characters from left, then I can give left function. So if I just give left of first name, and let's say I want to extract 2 characters from left side of the first name, and I'll just give an alias, for example, extract from left. Let's execute this, and you see it gives sy because I have extracted the first 2 from left. Similarly here it gives ca and so on. In the same way, if you just give right, then it will extract a fixed number of characters from right side. And if I just give, let's say 3, then let me just change this alias as well so that it looks more meaningful. And if I execute this, now you see it has extracted 3 characters from right side, so it is YED. Similarly here it is INE and so on. Now if you want to extract a particular substring from main string, then you can use substring function. For that, I can just give substring, and let's say you want to extract, let's say from third position, you want to extract a length of 4 from this particular string, that is first name, and let me just change it to extract a substring and click on execute. Now you see here that from the first name starting from third position, so you see starting from E, I want to extract a length of 4. So here anyways it is just 2 characters left after E, so that is E and D, so that is the reason it has displayed ED. For the second record, you see the third position is T, and from T it will extract a length of 4, so it is THER, and you see it has given me THER. So these are 5 important string functions, and I just wanted to convey this to you so that it will be easier for you to work with strings. Alright, let's talk about some date related functions. And the first one is day function. So you see here we have order date for each particular sales order ID. And if I want to extract the day part from this order date, then I can just use the day function. So day of order date, and I can just say an alias like extract day. Let me execute, and you see this is 31, that is the day for this particular date is 31. Similarly, if I just come down, you see here for this particular date, that is 2011-06-01, the day is 1. Similarly, you can also extract month. So for that you have to give month function, and let me just change it to month. And here if I execute, you see for this particular date the month is 05. Similarly, if I just come down, you see for this particular date the month is 06, and so on. In the same way, you can extract the year from a particular date. For that you have to use the year function, and let me just change it here as well. If I execute this, now you see we have extracted the year, so it is 2011. And if you want to extract the current system date with time and without any time zone, then you can use current underscore timestamp. So if I just give select current timestamp, and if I just execute this, you see if I just give F5 in keyboard, it has given me the current system date with time. So this is the time part, that is 17 hour, 20 minute, 40 second, and 210 is millisecond. And you see here it is not giving any time zone. For that I have used current timestamp. In this video lesson, I am going to talk about having clause. In this particular table, that is sales order detail table, let's say I want to know the total unit price per sales which is greater than 10,000. So what I mean is, let's say if I just give this, that is sum of unit prices is greater than 10,000. So you might think that I can use where condition, that is where clause for this. And if I just give where sum of unit price is greater than 10,000, and you see if I just click on execute, this will fail, and I'll let you know why it will fail. So you see that it says an aggregate may not appear in where clause. So please note that you cannot give an aggregate in where clause until it is a subquery. So I'll just show you about subquery later on, but at this moment please note that you cannot define an aggregate function with where clause if it is not a subquery. So this is wrong. And if you want to know all the total unit prices per sales order ID which is greater than 10,000, then you cannot use where clause. For that you have to give having, and please note that you have to give having clause after the group by clause. That means you cannot give having clause before group by clause. And if I just execute this, now you see this time it has given all the sales order ID with total unit prices per sales, where sum of unit prices are greater than 10,000, right? So you see here all the records are having sum of unit prices greater than 10,000. Similarly, I can give where condition for a particular column but not for aggregate function. So here I can give something like this, that is where sales order ID is greater than, let's say, 50,000. So this is fine, I can do like this, but I cannot give here that where sum of unit price is greater than 50,000. So if I just execute, you see here it is giving me all the records where sales order ID is greater than 50,000 and sum of unit prices is greater than 10,000. And I can also sort the result. So I can just give here, that is order by, let's say I can just give sales order ID, and I can also give descending, that is in descending order. And if I execute it, you see I'm getting this result. Now please note that you have to follow this order. That is, first you should give select, followed by from, then where, then followed by group by, then having, and order by. So if you're using all these statements, then you have to mandatorily you have to follow the same order. And if you change the order, for example, let's say if I just give order by here, let's say if I just give order by here, you see it is showing an error. So if I just execute it, you see it says incorrect syntax. That means you have to follow the order. Similarly, let's say if I just give group by clause before where clause, you see again it will throw an error. If I execute it, it will give an error, right? So it is mandatory that you have to follow this particular order if you are using where, group by, having, and order by clauses. All right, and please note that this is the order in which you have to code, but SQL Server engine will not process in the same order. So first it will consider the from clause, then it will consider the where clause, followed by group by clause, and then it will process the having clause, followed by select clause, and at end it will process the order by clause. So this is the order in which SQL Server will process this particular SQL statement. Alright, so please keep this in mind. And this is the order in which you have to code. Right? So if I just execute it, now I'm getting all the proper result. In SQL Server engine, it is possible to code a query inside another query. For example, let's say I am into purchase order header table and I want to get, for example, purchase order ID and employee ID from purchase order header table, where all the records from this table must be present in this particular table, that is purchase order detail table. So you see here the second table which we have taken is purchase order detail table. So in that case you can use a subquery. So what I mean is, let's say if I just come here and if I just say select purchase order ID, comma employee ID from purchase order header table, where purchase order ID in, so here I'm using in operator, so I can just say in and I can just pass a subquery. So you see here I'm just creating a subquery, and inside this you see this is my subquery. So I'll just pass this as my subquery, and let me just delete this. And you see here what I'm trying to say is that I want to get the purchase order ID and employee ID from purchase order header table, where purchase order ID from this particular table is present in select star. So in place of that I can just give select purchase order ID from this particular table, where purchase order detail ID is greater than 5. So if I just run my inner query, you see if I execute this, I'm getting all these purchase order IDs, and you see I'm getting 8840 rows. And if I just execute my whole query, you see I'm getting the purchase order ID and employee ID from this table, where all the purchase order ID from this table must be contained inside this particular query. So you see here I'm getting 4008 rows. And let's say if you're certain that your inner query will only give one result. So if I just give, for example, let's say equal to 5, and if I just execute it, now you see it is giving me only one result. So in that case, you can also give equal to operator, because if you give equal to operator, that means this particular column will match against the fixed value. And in this case, it has returned 4. So indirectly, what you are saying is where purchase order ID equals 4. So if you execute, you see it is giving me one result, that is 4 and 261 for purchase order ID and employee ID respectively. So if I just remove this 4, and you see here, if I just execute it, it is giving me the same result, that is 4 and 261. So this is how you can use a query inside another query, and this is called as subquery. Is there a way to combine rows or records from multiple tables into a single select statement? Yes, that is possible using union operator. So for example, let's say I have one column, that is business entity ID, which I am going to select from employee table. From person table, I am selecting business entity ID, and from customer table, if I select customer ID, you see I'm getting all these results. And if I want to combine all the rows, then in that case, I can just give union operator. So I can just give here union, and here also let me just give union. So union operator will be used to combine the records or rows from multiple tables into a single select statement. And please note that union will remove all the duplicate records. So if I just execute, now you see here it has given the list of all business entity ID, and total number of records, you see here it says 29518 rows. So please note that if I just give like this, you see here the number of columns in all the select statement should be same. So here I have given business entity ID, here also I have given business entity ID, and in this case I have given customer ID. So you see in all these select statement I have given only one column. So the number of columns should match, and also please note that the data type for each columns must be same or similar. And in all three select statement, you see here business entity ID is numeric field, here also business entity ID is numeric field, and here we have customer ID, which is also numeric field. So please make sure that whatever columns you are considering must have the same data type or similar data type. So you see here we are getting 29518 record, and if I just give union all, you see if I just give union all, it does the same operation, but it will not remove duplicates. So if I just execute, this time you see here it gives 40082 rows. So union operator will remove the duplicates, while union all will not remove the duplicates, but both these operators will combine records or rows from multiple tables. Alright, in the previous video lesson, we understood that if you want to combine the records from multiple tables, then you can use union operator, and if you want to combine multiple columns, then you can use joins. So let's say I want to get purchase order ID, purchase order detail ID, and order detail from these two tables. By combining these two tables, then I can give inner join so that I can get the matching records from both the tables. So what I mean is, let's say I want to make sure that the purchase order ID which is present in purchase order detail table should also match the purchase order ID from purchase order header table, and I want to combine the purchase order ID, purchase order detail ID with order date, then I can give join or inner join. So inner join and join is same. So what I mean is, let's say if I just give select purchase order ID comma purchase order detail ID from purchasing.purchase order detail table, and if I just give here inner join, and if I just give, let's say if I just remove all these, and if I just give inner join purchasing.purchase order header on, let's say I want to match purchase order ID. So purchase order ID from purchase order detail table equal to purchase order ID from purchase order header table. And also I want to get the order date, right? Now please note that purchase order ID is common between these two tables. So how the system will understand that which purchase order ID you are talking about? So for that, what I'll do is, for this particular table name, I'll just give a table alias. So for example, I'll just give here POD, and for this particular table, I'll just give a table alias as POH. Now, if I just give here, let's say POD dot purchase order ID, that means I'm trying to say that select the purchase order ID from POD, that is from purchase order detail table. And here you see we have POH, so I want to get the order date from POH, so I'll just give here POH dot order date, and this purchase order detail ID I want to get from purchase order detail table, so I'll just give here POD dot purchase order detail ID, and I'll make sure that I'll just give here POD dot purchase order ID equals POH dot purchase order ID. So what I mean is, you see here what I'm trying to do is, I want to select the purchase order ID, purchase order detail ID from purchase order detail table, and I want to get the order date from purchase order header table, where purchase order ID from purchase order detail table is equal to purchase order ID from purchase order header table. Alright, so you see here I'm matching the column, that is purchase order ID, and this is called inner join if you use the keyword inner join, or you can also give join. So both are same, but to be more precise, I used to prefer inner join, and if I execute it, you see here I'm getting all the records which are common to both these tables. That means all the matching records where purchase order ID from one table is equal to purchase order ID from another table. So in this case, I have combined columns. You see here we have purchase order ID, purchase order detail ID, and order date. So conclusion is, if you want to join multiple rows, then you can use union, and if you want to combine columns, then you can use joins. And in this case, we have used inner join, and there are some other joins as well, which we are going to discuss in the next video lesson. Take care. Bye. Hey people, welcome back. So in the previous video lesson, we learned about inner join, and let's consider these two tables, that is person table and business entity address table. So if I want to get the matching records from both the tables in such a way that I should get business entity ID from person table, first name from person table, I also want to get last name from person table, and I want to get business entity ID from business entity address table, and I also want address ID from business entity address table. And you see here, if I just execute this, I'm getting this particular result using inner join. And please note here that we are getting business entity ID from both the tables. So here we have business entity ID from person table, and again we are getting business entity ID from business entity address table, and I want to get all the matching values only. So here you see we have the matching value, that is business entity ID from person table must be equal to business entity ID from business entity address table. Now let's consider a scenario where I want to return all the records from the left table and only the matching record from the right table. So here you see this will be my left table and this will be my right table. So in this case, if I want to return all the records from left table, that is person table, and only the matching records from the business entity address table, then in that case I can use left join. So here I just have to give left join. So what it will do is it will give me all the records from the left table, that is person table, irrespective of whether it is matching, that is whether this particular condition is satisfied or not. But it will only give the matching records from the right table. So if this particular condition is satisfied, then only it will pull the values from the right table, that is business entity address table. And if there is no match between these two tables, then what it will do is it will just give null values for the right table. So if I just execute this, now you see here the business entity ID, that is 285, is present in both the tables. So that is the reason it has pulled out all the records. But you see business entity ID, that is 293, is not present in the right table. That is, it is not present in business entity address table. Just to verify that, I can just give here where business entity ID equals 293. And if I just run this, let me just execute this. You see it gives an empty result. That means 293 business entity ID is not present in business entity address table. So if you just see the output, in this case it has pulled all the records or all the values from the left table, that is person table. So you see here 293, Catherine and Abel, while it has not pulled anything from right table. So it has just given null values, that is unknown and missing values, for business entity ID and address ID from business entity address table. Similarly, you see business entity ID 295 is not present in right table, that is business entity address table, and that is the reason it has pulled this record from left table, while business entity ID and address ID from the right table is having null values. So whenever there will be match, you see it will be having complete list of values, and if there is no match, then it will pull all the values from the left table, but it will not pull any value from the right table, and in that case it will just denote as null. So that's it about left join. Take care. Bye. Hello everyone. As we have left join, in the same way we also have right join. In right join, it will return all the records from the right table and only the matching records from the left table. So in this particular example, if I just change to right join, you will notice that it will give all the records from business entity address table. So this is my right table and this is left table. So it will give all the records from the right table irrespective of whether it is matching or not, and it will only pull the matching records from the left table, that is person table. So if I just execute this, now you see business entity ID 285 is matching, so it has given the complete result. And if I just come down, you see these are all matching records, and let me just come down until I just find not matching record. So let me just come down and I can see all of the records are matching, and if I just come down still, you see all these are matching records. And yes, you see here, for example, business entity ID 1394, it is only present in right table, that is business entity address table, and that is the reason it has pulled out the records from this table, while it has displayed null for person table. So just to verify this, I'll just say where business entity ID equal to 1394, and if I just execute, you will notice that this record will not be present. So if I execute, you see this particular record is not present in person table, but it is present in business entity address table, and that is the reason you see it has pulled this particular record in the output with right table as correct values, but left table is not having values. Similarly, you see all these records are only present in right table, but they are not present in the left table. So in this way, you can use right join to pull all the records from the right table, but only the matching records from left table. The combination of left join and right join is called as full join. So before I show you full join, please note that for right join, we can also say right outer join, and for left join, we can also say left outer join. For example, if I just give here right outer join, you see it will give the same output as right join. So at this moment, it has 19,614 rows, and if I just execute this, you see it is giving me 19,614 rows. So right join is same as right outer join, while left join is same as left outer join. And coming back to the full join, if you want to return the records from both the tables, that is left table and right table, which are matching, and if you want to return all the record from the left table while only the matching record from right table, and another thing is, let's say if you want to return all the records from the right table and only the matching records from the left table, then in that case you can just give full join or full outer join. So if I just give here full join, and if I just execute this, you see here it is full outer join, and you can also give full join, it is same. Let me execute it, and you see these are all matching records, that is 285 and 285, but if you see here 293 is not matching, so it is present in left table. So you see it has given the record from left table while null from right table. In the same way, you see if I just come down, you see these all records, that is 578, 1852, 1096, etc. These are only present in right table. So you see it has pulled the record from right table while displaying null for the left table. So full outer join is the combination of left join and right join. Before you start creating tables, you must know all the important available data types in SQL Server. So these are all the important numeric data types. So the first one is bit data type, and this is used to store the whole numbers, that is 0 or 1, and in few cases it can also store null value. Overall, it will have 1 byte in memory. The next one we have is small int, which is used to store whole numbers which are small integers. So it will store whole numbers between minus 32768 to 32767, and in memory it will occupy 2 bytes. You can also use integer if you want to store whole numbers between this particular range, and it will occupy 4 bytes in memory. If you want to add auto increment field, then you can use identity. So you see here, if you use int with identity, and if you just give s comma I, that means s is starting value while I is increment by. So for example, you see here, if I just give product ID int identity 1 comma 1, that means product ID will be auto increment field starting from 1, and each time you add a record, it will add 1 and create the next record for product ID. And if you just give, for example, product ID int identity, then it is same as int identity 1 comma 1. And if you just give, let's say 1 comma 3, that means it will start from 1, and every time it will create a product ID after adding 3 to the previous product ID. So it will be like 1, 4, 7, 10 and so on. The next one we have is money, which is used to store larger currency field. That is, if you want to add monetary data between this particular range, that is from here to here, then you can use money field, and it occupies 8 bytes in memory, and for identity it occupies 4 bytes. Similarly, if you want more precision over your data, then you can use float. So you see here, it can store a precision number between this particular number to this particular number, and depending on the value of n, it can occupy either 4 or 8 bytes. Let's talk about string data type. And the most important string data type is char and varchar. So you see, if I just give char of n, then it can store a text of fixed length, and maximum it can have 8000 characters, and depending on the value of n, it will occupy a memory in storage. And if you want to add variable field record which will store text, then you can use varchar of n, and maximum it can also store 8000, but in this case it will occupy 2 bytes plus number of characters. And please note that this is variable character, so if you are not sure whether you will get a fixed character or variable character, then it is better to define with varchar of n. Now let's talk about nchar and nvarchar. So both of these are same as char and varchar respectively, but the only difference is that these are used for encode strings. So encode strings are like encoding standard, which is oftenly used for cases where multiple languages and scripts are used. So in this case, it will store 2 times the fixed length, that is 2 into n, and in this case it will be 2n plus 2 bytes. And if you are not sure whether you should use nchar or nvarchar, then it is better you use char and varchar respectively. So these two are more popular compared to nchar and nvarchar. Talking about date and time data types, the first one we have is date time, which is important, and this is used to store date within the range from this particular year, that is 1753 0101 to 1999 1231, and the accuracy of this particular date in millisecond is 3.33, which means that it will round the value like 0.003, 0.006, 0.009 and so on. In memory, it will occupy 8 bytes. Similarly, you can only use date if you don't want time. So in that case, this data type is used to store a date between 0001, 0101 to 9999 1231. So this is the default format, that is YY, YY, -DD, -MM, and in memory it will occupy 3 bytes. Let's talk about timestamp. So let's say you want to add a unique timestamp which will be from the internal clock, and every time if you update a record, it should automatically get updated from the internal timestamp while creating the row or while updating the row. Then in that case, you can use timestamp. And another data type which is not from numeric string or date data type, but this is a common data type which is called as unique identifier. And this is used to store a 16-byte GUID, that is globally unique identifier. So you see here, if I just take a column, you see here for row GUID, it is having a unique identifier field. So this is same as what I'm showing here. So it will be like 16-byte GUID, and often it is used for row ID. So you see here, for this particular row ID, it is unique identifier. So keeping these numeric data types, string data types and date data types along with this general unique identifier, I'll start creating tables in next video lesson. Till then, please go through all the data types which we have discussed in this video lesson. Take care. Bye. Now, the time has come to start creating tables. Now, we know that in year 2020, a pandemic came which was COVID-19, and by April or May, it was spread in almost all of the countries of the world, and even by 2019 end, in few countries it started spreading. So let us try to create a table, and in that particular table we will just store few columns or few fields. That is, for example, let's capture the date, and I will also capture daily confirmed cases and daily deaths, and based on particular country, and we will also capture the total loss, and we will add a flag. So if the flag is 1, that means the COVID case is true, and if the flag is 0, that means there is no COVID cases in that particular countries. For example, by the time I am recording this video lesson, few countries, for example Palau or Kiribati or Tuvalu, these countries does not have a single case of COVID-19. So let's try to create a table. Now before that, let us try to create an empty database. So to create a database, we have to use create database and then database name. So let's try to create a database. So I'll just give here create database and name of the database. So I'll just say, for example, let's say COVID-19. So this is the database I'm going to create, or you can also give any other name as per your requirement. So if I just execute, so you see it says command successful, and let me just click here, or let me just go to database and refresh it. So if I just refresh, now you see here we have a database called COVID-19. So I'm going to create all the tables inside this particular. So you see at this moment there are no tables. That means there are no user tables. So these are all graph tables, external tables, file tables, and system tables. And we are not going to learn anything from these tables much. So we have to create our own table. For that, we will use create table statement. For that, the syntax is create table and table name, and you have to give the list of column, that is column 1 data type 1. Again you have to give column 2 data type 2, and so on, and at end you have to close the parenthesis. So this is the syntax. Now let us do one thing. I'll create a table with the name COVID stats. So I can just say COVID stats, and let's try to add a column, that is, for example, let me just give COVID ID. So I'll just give here COVID ID, and let's try to give this as integer field and with identity. So that means this is auto increment field. So let me just delete all these, and let's add another column, that is, let's say date, and for this I'll just give data type as date time, and the next field which I want to add is daily confirmed cases. For this I will just say int, and let's say I want to add daily deaths, so I can just say daily deaths, and let's say I can just make this as small int, and you see here I can just make it as capital D. And the next field which we can add here is, let's say we can add country, and we can also add, for example, COVID flag, and before that for country I'll just say varchar as 25. So I'm just trying to add a variable character, right, which is having a length of maximum 25 and let's try to add COVID flag, and this will be my bit field. So this is like a flag which will be containing a value of either 0 or 1, and if you do not pass any value, it can contain null value also. And let's add another field, that is total loss. So I'll just say total loss, and this will be my money field, right? So let me just format this properly, and what I'll do is I'll just say date time, and then we have daily confirmed cases, daily deaths, then we have country, COVID flag, and then total loss, right? So let me just pull it down, and you see I have used create table name, that is COVID stats, and then first column is COVID ID integer with identity field. That means it will be having auto increment. So let's say I can also add something like this, that is it can start with 1 and every time it will get incremented by 3. So I can add something like this as well. And next I have date. So let's say I'll just say like COVID date. So this looks more meaningful, COVID date, and I'm defining this as date time, daily confirmed cases as integer, daily deaths as small int, country as varchar of 25, COVID flag, and then total loss. Alright, let me just give a semicolon, and first I should go to this particular database. So I can just select COVID-19 database, right, and click on execute, and you see it says command completed successfully. So here let me just refresh it, and you see here we have created a new table, that is COVID stats, right? And please note that by default it has created the schema name as DBO, because if you don't give a schema name, it will create a table with default schema name, which is DBO in case of this particular free version of SQL Server. In the previous example, you see we created this table, that is COVID stats. In the same way, I have already prepared a query to create another table, that is item header table. Here you can see that we have item ID, which is integer field. We have item name, which is varchar of 50. We have item order date, which is date time field. We have item ship date, which is also date time field, and we have item amount, which is money field. Now you see that at this moment all these columns are nullable in nature. That means these columns can contain null values because we have not added any constraint that will make sure that any of the column cannot contain null values. So what I mean is, let's say you want to make sure that a particular column should not contain null values, then in that case you have to add a constraint called not null. So let's say if I just want to make sure that item order date and item ship date should not contain null values, then I can add a constraint called not null in both the columns. So here I can just give not null, and I can also add the same constraint here. So this will make sure that this particular column and this particular column will not have null values. Similarly, you can also add a constraint that will make a particular column unique. For that, you have to give unique constraint. So unique constraint makes sure that each record in a particular column of a table is unique, so the values in a column will always be different. So let's say for item name, if I want to make sure that it contains a unique values every time, so I can just give here keyword called unique. So here you see I have added unique constraint. In the same way, if you want to uniquely identify each record, then you can use primary key. And primary key will also make sure that it will not allow duplicate values in a column. And it will also not allow null values. Now please note that, let's say if I want to make item ID as primary key, then I can just give here primary key. And another important point to note here is that do not get confused between primary key and a unique constraint. A primary key will never have null values, while a unique key can have one null value in a column. Also, you can add any number of unique constraints. For example, you can also add unique constraint here, you can also add unique constraint here based on your requirement. But there will be only one primary key constraint in a table. And the main idea to use primary key is to maintain the entity integrity. And the entity integrity helps to relate multiple tables by relating them through some columns. So in this case, you see, if I just execute this, let me execute this, and you see this is successful. If I just come here and refresh it, now you see we have another table, that is items header, and if I expand the column, you see here it gives pk, that is primary key, and integer not null. For item name, you see it is varchar of 50 and it is null. And you see item order date will be date time not null. So here we have added not null. Similarly, for item ship date, you see here it is not null. So it is showing here as not null. And item amount is showing as money field, but it is showing as null because we have not added any not null constraint here. Now, what I have done is I have created another query that will create another table. So I have prepared this query as well. And let's see if I just add this query. You see, if I just add this query, and let me just pull it down. And let me just reduce the font a bit. And this time I am going to create a table called item detail, which contains item ID, item detail ID, item due date, item order quantity, received quantity, ship date, and item amount. And please note that item ID is integer, detail ID is integer, due date is date time, order quantity is small int, and we have received quantity, which is also small int. Item ship date is date time, while item amount is money field. Now please note here that at this moment we are not having any constraint, and let us try to add constraint on this particular table for few columns. For example, let's say for item due date, if I just say not null, then I can just give not null constraint here. Similarly, let's say for any other column, for example, item order quantity, item received quantity, and let's say item ship date, I can add not null as well. Right? And you can also make a particular column as primary key. So let's say I want to make item ID and detail ID as primary key. So you see here, if you want to keep multiple columns in a primary key, then what you can do is you can just give a comma here, and you can just give here constraint, and you can just give the name of the constraint. So let's say if I just give item detail pk, that is name of the table, and at end I'm giving a suffix as pk. So this is the constraint name for primary key, and I'll just give primary key, and then I will just pass the columns for primary key. So let's say I want item ID. So I'll just give here item ID, comma, item detail ID, and both of these columns should be part of primary key. And please note, there should be only one primary key in the table. And in this case, item ID along with item detail ID. So this particular combination is primary key. And please note, in this case, let's say if I want to reference the item ID of this particular table, that is item detail table, to item ID of item header table, then I can just add a foreign key. So in that case, item header will be parent table and item detail will be child table. So if I just add a comma here, And if I just say constraint, and if I just give the name of the table, that is item detail, and for constraint, that is foreign key constraint, normally I used to give fk as suffix, and I will just say foreign key, and let's say I want to relate item ID, so I'll just give here item ID references. So for that, you see references means that it is linked to this particular table. So I have to give the name of the table, that is item header, and I have to give the column to which it is linked. So I'm giving here item ID. Alright, so if you see here, we have already created this table, right? Now this is my parent table, and I'm going to create the child table for this particular parent. So this is one of the child table. Like this, there can be multiple child table for the same parent table. So in this case, if I just give create table item detail and all these columns, and if I just give constraint name, primary key, and I'm making item ID and item detail ID as my primary key, and I'm adding another constraint, that is item detail fk as foreign key, and item ID of this particular table is linked to item header, and in item header item ID is linked. So for linking, I'm using references, and in this case this will act like one of the child table of this particular parent table, right? So this is called as entity relationship. That means, you see here, if you have a record in this particular table, let's say parent table, and if you want to insert a record in child table, then you have to make sure that that particular record should already exist in the item header table, that is parent table, for item ID column. So let's create this table. So if I just select this and if I click on execute, now you see here we have created this table, right? And now if I just come here, let me just refresh it, and you see we have item header as well as item detail. Now if I just expand item detail, go to columns, now you see here we have item ID, and here it says pk, fk. For item detail it says pk, int, not null. That means item ID and item detail ID is primary key. That means both the combination is one primary key, and we have foreign key as item ID, right? And this foreign key is linked with item ID of item header table. So if you just go here to item header, now you see here you are able to see that it is pk, and if you see a key symbol which is pointing towards left side, then it is primary key. And if you just go to item detail, you see here that in this case also we have keys, and both these keys are pointing towards left side. So this is primary key, item ID with item detail ID. And you can also go to keys, and here you can see that we have two keys, that is item detail pk. So this is my primary key, and for foreign key you see that it will also have a key button which will point towards the right side. So we have item detail fk. In the same way, you can go to item header table, go to keys, and you see we have one primary key, and here we did not add a particular primary key constraint name. So by default, SQL Server has created a name like this, and for unique constraint it has created a particular unique constraint name as well. So in this way you can create tables using particular constraints, and here we have added not null constraint, unique constraint, primary key constraint, and foreign key constraint. So that's it in this video lesson. Take care. Bye. Okay, if you just give select star from table name, that is COVID stats, you will notice that at this moment the output is empty. So you see the output is empty because we have not inserted any records into table. To insert record into table, we have to use insert statement. So you see, this is the syntax of insert statement, that is insert into table name, values, and then you have to give list of values. So for example, just to save time, I have already created an insert statement. You see here, let's say I want to add this particular record to this table. That is, you will notice that COVID ID is auto increment field. So that is the reason it will automatically created by the system. So you see, if I just right click here, go to properties, and you see here in identity column it is showing as true, and it is showing that it is getting incremented by 3 and starting value is 1, right? So that is the reason you don't have to pass any value for COVID ID, and it is automatically created by the system. So I'll just pass value for first COVID date. So this is my date, and for daily confirmed cases I have added a value of 1000. For daily deaths I have added a value of 10. For country, since it is string field, I have given in single quotes and the name is USA, let's suppose, and COVID flag I have given as 1. So either it will accept 0, 1 or null value, and total loss I have given this particular value, that is 1 million. Let's try to insert this. So I have just selected this and I'll just click on execute button, and you see that it says 1 row affected. That means it has created 1 record in this particular table. So let us do one thing. Let me just run this. And now you see that SQL Server assigned COVID ID 1, and this is the date. This is the daily confirmed cases and so on. Now, please note, if I just come down, you see here that if you just want to insert records for few columns, or let's say if you want to just pass the list of columns, then you can just give insert into table name, list of columns, and then list of values. And in this case, either you can pass all the columns of the table or you can pass few columns of the table. But please note, you cannot pass COVID ID here because it is auto increment field, and SQL Server will automatically assign a value for that. So let's take an example of this as well. So I have already created a SQL statement, and you see if I just give insert into dbo.covidstats, and I have just passed COVID date and country. So I'm passing only these 2 columns, and I'm passing the value of first column, that is COVID date, and country I'm passing as Tuvalu, right? Let me just select this, and if I execute, you see it says 1 row affected. Let me just come back here and give my select statement. This time you see I have automatically COVID ID 4 because previous COVID ID was 1 and it added 3 to this particular number and it became 4. COVID date is same which I have given, and you see for country it is showing as Tuvalu. And please note that daily confirmed cases, daily deaths, COVID flag and total loss is showing as null because I did not pass any value for these particular columns. And let's come down. So we have already run these statements, right? And if I just show you again, let's come down, and suppose you want to add multiple records in a single time, then what you can do is you can just give something like this, that is insert into table name and list of columns. So here I have given 6 columns, that is COVID date, daily confirmed cases, daily deaths, country, COVID flag, and I have given total loss. And you see I am providing the COVID date, then I am giving daily confirmed cases, daily deaths, country, bit, the COVID flag, and then total loss. After that, you see I have just given a continuation, that is I have given a comma, and then I have given the value for second record. Similarly, after the comma, I am giving a value for the third record. So you see in this case I am passing this particular date along with these information, that is daily confirmed cases as 0, daily deaths as 0, country as Palau, COVID flag as 0 and total loss as 5,000. And if I just select this, if I execute, now you see it says 3 rows affected. So at a single time I have added 3 records into my table, right? So let me just select star from dbo.covidstats, and now you see I have added a total of 5 records into this table. So this is how you can insert record into table. So how do you update or modify an existing record? Let's say I'm into record number 2, that is for COVID ID 4. We see that there are few null values. You see here for 4 columns we have null values, and let's say I want to modify the null values to a particular value for COVID ID 4, and let's say for COVID flag and total loss I will set the null values to different values. For that I can give update statement. So you see here the syntax of update statement is update table name, set list of columns with their values for which you want to modify to a new value, and then there is optional where condition. So if you don't give where condition, it will update for all the rows. So you see, if I just skip this where clause, what happens is you are trying to say update table name, set column 1. For example, let's say for column 1 you have, let's say, COVID flag, so you can just say COVID flag equal to, let's say, 0, and if you want to change or modify the value of total loss, you can just say here total loss equal to a particular value, let's say 100. And if I don't give a where condition, what happens is it will update all the records of these 2 columns. And here of course I have to change the table name, so it is COVID stats, right? So either you can just give here dbo.covidstats, or you can just give COVID stats, because by default the schema name it will take is dbo. So please make sure that when you give update statement, you should be very cautious, because if you don't give a where condition, it will update the records for all the rows. So in this case, let's say I want to only update for COVID ID 4, then I can just give here where COVID ID equal to 4, and if I execute this, now you see it says 1 row affected. Let me just give select star from COVID stats, and let me just execute this. Now you see for COVID ID 4 the COVID flag is 0 and then total loss is 100. Previously these 2 columns were having null values, right? So this is how you can use update statement. Hey people, welcome back. Once you have created a table, and if you want to change the structure of the table, then in that particular case you can use alter statement. So alter statement can be used to add a column or list of column to a table. Using alter statement, you can delete a column or list of columns from a table, and you can also modify the property of a column, let's say like data type of the column as well. So let's try to code some examples of alter statement. If I just take COVID stats table, and if I just remove this statement, and let's say I want to add a new column to this particular table. So you see here we have these columns at this point of time, and let's say that I want to add a column with the name as continent, and let's say that it should be character of length 12. So for that I can just write alter table and then table name, that is COVID stats, and I have to give add column name, that is continent, and it is character of, let's say, 12 length. So the statement here which I have written is alter table name. So if you want to change the structure of the existing table, then you have to use alter table statement. So here it is alter table code stats add column name data type. So if I execute this, you see it is successful, and let's go to columns, refresh it, and now you see here we have added this particular column, that is continent. Now let's assume that once you have added the column and you are not happy with this particular data type, or for any reason you want to change this particular data type, then using the same alter table statement you can do that as well. So what I mean is, copy this and I can just say alter table COVID stats, and here I have to give alter column continent. And now let's say I want to change the character to variable character, so I can just give here varchar of, let's say, 15. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to change this table, that is COVID stats table, for which I have given alter table statement, and I'm going to change this particular column, that is continent, for which I'm giving alter column name and then data type. So let me just execute this, and it is successful. So you see here at this moment it is character, and once I refresh it, now you see here it is varchar of 15, right? In the same way you can drop a particular column as well. So for that I can just give alter table name, that is code stats, and I have to give drop column and name of the column. So let's say I want to drop this particular column, I can give here, and if you want to drop multiple columns, then you have to give a comma and that particular column, let's say column 2. Again, if I want to drop another column, let's say column 3, I can just give something like this. But at this moment I just want to delete continent column, so I'll just select the statement and click on execute, and now if I just refresh it, now you see that this particular column is gone. If you want to delete the records from table, then you have to use delete statement. So what I mean is, let's say I want to remove a record from the table where country is Brazil and COVID flag is 1. For that I have to give delete from table name, so it is COVID stats, and here I have to give where condition, that is where country equals Brazil and COVID flag equals 1. And if I execute this statement, now you see it says 1 row affected, and if I give select star from code stats, let me just execute this, and you see that particular record is deleted. Similarly, if you want to delete all the records from table, then you can simply give something like this. You can just give delete from COVID stats, and if you just omit the where condition, that means you are saying delete everything from this particular table. So you should be very careful while using delete from table statement. Similarly, let's say if you want to delete, let's say only top 2 records or top 3 records from a table, then you can just give here delete top 2 from table name, and what you have to do is you have to surround this 2 within parentheses. So if you just run this statement, you will delete the top 2 records from this particular table. So if I just execute this statement, now let me just give select, and you see that the top 2 records are deleted. Similarly, I can also give something in percent. For example, let's say I want to delete top 10%, then I can just give delete top 10% from COVID stats. And if you do that, it will delete the top 10% records from this particular table. Let's say you want to delete your table itself. That means you want to permanently delete your table. Then in that case, you can use drop statement. So if I want to delete COVID stats table, I can just give here drop table and then table name, that is COVID stats. And if I execute this, you see it says command completed successfully. And now if I just come here and if I just refresh this,